welcome here today. I'm Mark Lang with the Mark Lang Realty Group, hired by Keller Williams, and I'm here today with Devin Donovan with Performance Inspections, one of my go-to home inspectors that I'd like to be able to share with the community and with our clients what you need to look for in a home inspection. So,
Hey,
Devin.
thank you. I appreciate the invitation. I'm looking forward to discussing some, finer points of real estate home inspections, and part of the transaction is understanding what's the reason for a home inspection. Why do we do this? Why is it important for buyers to do it? Why is it important for sellers to do an inspection? Those kinds of things. So,
Good.
Looking forward to it.
So how do you advise your clients on why and how you do your inspections and some of your credentials behind it and how you operate? Because you operate in multiple states, my understanding, in West Virginia, Maryland, D.C., and Virginia.
I do.
And they all have different rules and regulations.
They sure do. Yeah. It's it can be a little confusing, especially for even seasoned buyers, let alone first-time buyers. So to answer your first part of your question, why to get a home inspection? Just to know what you're buying. Just understanding the intricacies of whether the roof is 5 years old or 10 years old, or if it does have damage from a hailstorm or maybe just bad workmanship that nobody knew about.
Right.
So understanding, what's the nuts and bolts of your house. You're paying a lot of money, the most money you'll ever spend on a house. But just find out what that is. What are you truly getting? And what is it going to cost to maintain that kind of thing? If you've got a crack in the foundation, I don't always see that. I see some similar situations, but how much is that going to be to fix? That has to be added to the cost of the home, in my opinion. So now the value of the home is the purchase price, and then whatever else has to be fixed before you can maintain the home safely and move on. My credentials background. First of all, I'm an ASHI-based home inspector. That's American Society of Home Inspectors. I got my accreditation in 2018. I got my license in 2017. I worked for a multi-inspector firm for the first 2 years, kind of cut my teeth in Northern Virginia and got to know, in D.C., got to know the business. I've always been in the trades from a young man, helping my dad renovate houses and that kind of thing. So being in the trades, meaning repair, renovation. I got my master's electrician's license in 1995. I was active for about 15 years in Maryland. So I have a lot of varied knowledge base, practical information about residential. I was also a commercial electrician. So those kinds of things factor into my credentials. And I keep my licenses up in multiple states.
So where do you do most of your inspections? Which state? Or are you pretty... I can't think of the statistic right off. I'd say West Virginia is largely where I do a lot of my home inspections. Mm-hmm. I reside in West Virginia, but Virginia, the tri-state area, kind of the DMV. I do go into Pennsylvania. They don't have a licensure requirement for home inspectors, as long as you're part of a nonprofit organization like ASHI or INTERNACHI or something. In Pennsylvania.
In Pennsylvania.
But in Virginia,
you're licensed.
You have to be licensed.
Yes, DPOR requires that licensure. Yeah. And I have to periodically get continuing education minutes.
Right. And it used to be that you all were not, home inspectors didn't have to be licensed in Virginia. And as a realtor, we had a lot of struggle with that back in years ago.
Sure.
Because anybody could be a home inspector. So, and there was no accountability and credibility to that. So we as a realtor, mm-hmm. And my colleagues, we appreciate that we are now working with like professionals that are truly licensed
right.
and regulated.
Absolutely.
So that's a positive, especially. So the other thing is what do you tell your clients? I mean, as a realtor, we tell our clients what we're looking for in the home inspection. But can you give us a little bit more information about, you have marginal, you have maintenance issues, you have cosmetic issues, you have defectives and safeties. What is it that you tell your clients you should concentrate on from that report that you provide?
Sure. I would say the base, I always call it like the meat and potatoes of the inspection. The big, heavy, expensive things to maintain, like heating and cooling systems, HVAC. Then you have the roofing. You have foundation things. You have water management around the house. Appliances, not so much, because they can be easily changed out. I don't really spend a lot of time on inspecting appliances. I spend a lot of time on communicating water mitigation around the house, because 9 out of 10 houses have water issues, whether the downspouts are too small, or they're clogged, or they're not maintained, or the grading around the property is not adequate. So water is staying close to the house and maybe coming toward the foundation, or even soaking into the foundation,
Right.
causing serious problems. Then you have mold possibilities and things like that. So maintenance for water mitigation is, I would say, it's clearly in the top 10 of issues that I find during the home inspection. HVAC maintenance, changing those filters, doesn't make the equipment work as hard when you change those filters. If you do have a fuel burning like natural gas or propane, those can be basically checked for proper operation. But there's always a good maintenance rule on a regular basis for maintaining heating and cooling equipment, that kind of thing.
So back to another more specific about the question, I guess, is, do we concentrate as a realtor, how we're advising our clients is maintenance are maintenance issues. This is just knowing what you need to take care of this home and learning the home. But when we're looking at a contract that has a home inspection contingency, we're advising clients on our side, let's look at the defective items and the safety related issues.
Sure.
And that's where we really gear it to, versus asking a seller to repair a cosmetic issue or a maintenance issue.
Exactly. Yeah. And I would agree with that. I don't do a lot of inspections for cosmetic things unless, the flooring is peeling up and it could be a trip hazard. Yeah. I'm not judging the color of the walls or the color of the carpet or the condition of the carpet unless it's a physical safety hazard. But you're right. There are several situations where health and safety are paramount. Yeah. If we see an attic space that has very little ventilation, which is common, in new world construction, if the air can't circulate in the attic, that's a health and safety thing that's going to bring mold into that space. So that can be costly up front if we don't know that. If nobody's poked their head up into the attic in 15, 20 years, there's a chance for that. Or even in the basement, circulating air in those places, leaning against the wall, equipment or boxes, it's going to get moisture, high humidity. Mold can grow. It just needs organic material to feed on, water and temperature, and it will grow. I'm not a mold specialist, but those kinds of things have to be brought to attention of a potential buyer to know what's going on inside their house.
Yep. Excellent. My next question for you, I guess, is basically, it's a very competitive market here in Northern Virginia. It has been for the last 2 years, 3 years, and we're seeing a lot of contract offers come in. Even to this date, we're getting multiple offers, and people are waiving home inspections.
Sure.
So what is from your perspective, it's not that it kind of hurts the home inspection business. However, I think we need to bring to attention to our clients that it is still very important that you do a home inspection, regardless if you do it during or you do it after you purchase the home, because you need to know what's in this home. So how do you handle those types of issues? I know we've done some before. It was very competitive. We would do walkthrough inspections, a 30-minute walkthrough inspection, just so that the buyer feels pretty comfortable. Someone's looked at this house other than just them, because this is their largest purchase of their life. So as a realtor, I hate not putting a home inspection in, because it could be detrimental to the client. And my interest and yours is to protect that client. So what's your take on these, competitive business and there's no home inspections, and is there any remorse at the end from not doing the home inspection?
I'm sure there is. I can imagine there is. My personal thought is, if you won't hear those stories. I'm sure there's just nobody's going to come up and say, yeah, I didn't get a home inspection and it cost me $25,000 extra to fix the problem within the house.
Yep.
Whatever that was. Nobody's going to run to the podcast or something and exclaim that they screwed that part of it up. I understand that economics 101, it's supply and demand.
Yep.
And part of the equation and part of the marketing is, or the result of real estate marketing is, hey, we've got a house for sale. We've got 10 buyers for one house. In some cases, maybe more contracts come in. I'm hearing some of this secondhand. It's not my purview. I don't focus on the real estate transaction itself or how that works. But through hearing that, and I understand that, hey, I'm sorry, I get calls from realtors that normally use me on a regular basis, say, look, I'm doing a lot of listing and I'm not using a home inspection, or I'm getting a lot of buyers, but all the deals I have to be competitive, and one of the demands of this market, let the sellers kind of dictate what's happening.
Right.
That's unfortunate for the buyer, but and I love the point that you just made. There is an opportunity to still have a home inspection, and the benefit is, even though you've purchased the house, let's say you've gone to settlement, you own the house, you're ready to move in, and you hire me, hopefully, and get a home inspection, and then we lay out, okay, here's what you're getting. The roof is okay. It's 10 years old, my guess, and you probably have another 15 or 20 years. It's a specific roof, architectural shingle roof, let's say. At least now you have that information going forward. If the roof was in bad shape and you only had 5 years, you wouldn't know that.
Yep.
That kind of thing. Now, I don't typically add dates specifically to roofs, but I say, look, here's a few things that you can do to, change the plumbing vents coming through the roof, seal the driveway to prolong the life. You've got a few cracks, but you're gonna save it another 5, 8, 10 years if you kind of do some maintenance things. So a secondary, after the settlement of a home that a buyer is buying, now they can at least have a maintenance checklist that they can go on, and I provide that.
Yeah, and you provide an excellent report. I mean, a lot of people will put that in their new home purchase so that they can understand what you provided them and can go back to it. I've always kept my home inspection reports. It's an important document to go with that home.
It is. I love the track record that people can use it. I recommend people keep it and just look at it every year and just say, okay, it's springtime. I'm going to do some spring cleaning. Let's check out my report. I remember the guy came. I can't remember his name, but he gave me this report. I can click on it and get this live report again and read through and do some maintenance checklist stuff.
Hard to believe people wouldn't remember Devin Donovan.
Yeah,
it's a DD here.
That's right.
It's with performance inspection.
Inspection, and that's what I base my company's name is. It's a performance evaluation of your house. If you're working in a office setting or an industrial setting, you get a performance evaluation on your performance at work.
Right.
And the job of the roof is to shed water off the roof. How is that roof performing?
Right.
And that's I think that really resonates with people that cognitive, if they're aware of it or it's subliminal one way or another, you're recognizing that there is a value.
Yep. And
communicating the current condition of your home, your asset. I mean, you yourself, Mark, houses are going for, $1 million, $500,000 to $1 million and stuff. I just did an inspection for you a week ago, and it was $2.5 million house, and it was stunningly beautiful. How many defects? I call them defects. How many did we find? We were like 5?
Yeah.
Maybe.
If that.
Yeah. And it was significant. There was a water heater that had some corrosion on it, and it didn't have the expansion tank. And the client called me after he read the report, and he thanked me for the report, but he had fabulous questions.
Yeah.
I love that about clients that ask me pertinent and valuable to them questions.
Right.
Because that's really the meat and potatoes of what my business is, what I perform. I feel like I'm an advocate for the buyer.
Yep.
When there's everybody else is, hey, sign this paper and this is your cost for this, and hell, there's commissions involved, and then there's these, you have insurance premiums and so on and so forth. Yes, you're paying me for a home inspection, but I'm giving you factual information about the condition of the house. What else can I offer you? Well, explain to me, what does that mean, an expansion tank on the water heater? Not all jurisdictions require that. Every manufacturer of a water heater requires you to have an expansion tank. So when the cold water enters the water heater and you leave, go to work, and then the unit heats up, whether it's gas or electric. On-demand water heaters are a little different. They don't retain water in a vessel, but any kind of vessel, pressure vessel, we know water expands, so it has to have a place to be. Or you just raise water in the tank or in the whole plumbing system, which can cause some failures, leaks.
Right.
That's that kind of thing. So simple, subtle things like that. I find that pretty much, I'd say 80% of the houses have an issue of that.
But back up on that expansion tank issue, because we've had this before, is as code changes with the building codes throughout the county or the jurisdiction, there was a time where they were not required.
Correct.
So depending on the age of that home, if it doesn't have an expansion tank, it may have been because when it was installed, it wasn't there. But to be code today, it would need one if you went to go replace it, or it's a safety issue that you should consider. But I kind of want to delineate that, yeah, it was okay then, but it's not okay now.
Well, things have changed, and then you make a great point. A lot of the authorities that have jurisdiction, communities in the states and areas that I inspect, have changed their approach. They have improved safety factors,
Yep.
and one of them is putting a check valve on the potable water system. So when that happens, typically an old water heater in an older house, let's say 30 years old, would just expand. The hot water would expand, and then would push it back out into the main water line.
That's right.
Well, it can't happen anymore because we put the jurisdictions these authorities have put in to keep contamination from happening, whether it's a terroristic act or an accident, or there's some kind of a problem. So that's, these things change and they progress. In addition, I always fall back on the manufacturer's standards to say, hey, it's kind of like the bracket on the freestanding range. It's a little frustrating for people to see
The
that.
tip bracket?
The anti-tip bracket.
Yeah.
How many kids are going to open the oven door, stand on it, and see what's mom's got on the stove for dinner? I just want to make sure people are aware that can happen. Does it happen? I don't know.
Yeah.
I've been a kid. My kid and my, it's, hey, is that hot? And you put your hand on it.
Right.
I was not that sharp as a young man. So, but there's things in place to help protect us for that. And I want the homeowner to know that.
Right.
Very much like window heights. Window heights have changed. They used to be full length to the floor, and then they were tempered glass. And now their requirement has to be 24 inches. So we talk about all these different standards. I can't say a code compliant issue inside of a report or inside of my purview.
Right.
I'm not licensed for code compliance or even communicating those.
Yeah.
What I say is health and safety. So I'm not trying to get around the system, but I am pointing out, hey, you're paying me for my consultation on the safety aspects of your home. And these are the things I want you to know about.
Right.
If it happens to save your young, my grandkids from running a tricycle through the window and it shatters in big shards, or they fall more than 6 feet, that's a concern of mine. And once again, I feel like an advocate for the home buyer.
And that's the perfect word, being the advocate for the home buyer. Because in Virginia, it's a buyer beware state. So that's another reason why we do encourage the home inspections, because it's up to the buyer.
There are no
to do the due
disclosures, are there?
diligence. There's no disclosures in the state of Virginia unless it's a known defect. If it's a known defect, then, and the realtor knows that, we have to, of course, disclose that. But
Sure.
that doesn't mean the seller has to tell us there's a known defect.
Mm-hmm.
It's and what we talk about known defect is something you can't visibly see, like the roof leaking or something, but they know it's leaking, but they haven't fixed it.
Okay.
It's not a defect if it was leaking and they fixed it, and it's no longer a defect. It's no issues there. But that's why in the state of Virginia, which is one of the states that I represent as well as Florida now, is that we encourage that home inspection because we have to do our due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
Before you go spend $500,000, you want to know what you're buying as much as you can. But sometimes the market doesn't allow us to do that if you really want that house.
Sure.
So, but you still should do a home inspection at some point so you know what you purchased
Right.
and how to maintain that home, especially for first-time home buyers.
I agree. And I've had a lot of first-time home buyers. I mean, I have children. I have 4 daughters. They're, in their 30s and 40s. And it was a lot of fun for me when they were younger to be able to hold them by the hand and say, here's the traffic line. I want you to hold my hand. And then pretty soon they knew the traffic and then they wouldn't walk out into it. So I'm kind of hierarchical, giving them some information to be able to make good decisions going forward.
Right.
Eventually, I'm not going to be there when they go to cross the road. And I always use this analogy. Same way with first-time home buyers. They don't know what they don't know. It's not a defect in that person. They just simply haven't had the experience. So how do we help first-time home buyers from the real estate side, and then the obviously the lending side, insurance side, and then of course the home inspection side.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of coaching. I talk a lot. You always kind of tease me a little bit that hey, we're tapping my watch here. We got a schedule to keep. At the same time, that innate fatherly figure that I think I have, or that dad gene that I carry and embrace,
is something that I think is important to be able to offer up to a client and say, here are the things that I see in their house. If you're my child or you're my brother or you're my family member, treating you the same as I would, those people, because I want you to know about your house. I'm getting paid. There's no extra grant. I appreciate your referrals. I don't work for you. I work for your client, and I work for the client specific. I get clients that find my webpage or they see my Facebook posts at performanceinspection.us. They see my videos that I produce, and it's informative. I try to hand somebody something, verbally, visually. Hey, here's an example of this situation. The roof is leaking, or here's a potential for the roof to leak. Hire a qualified contractor to come in and fix this. And that's really what that is. And I'm working directly for that buyer client, referrals aside. I appreciate them. I use them quite often, but it's just that inroad or that bit of information and that confidence that I want people to have with my home inspection. Not only is my inspection thorough, detailed, it comes from an area of knowledge in the trades, but it also comes from experience and how to report effectively. We're not going to be talking about alarming the client. Oh my gosh, all of your outlets in the house are upside down and they can't be that way. And I've heard inspectors, I've been to a lot of trainings, and I'm like, guys, you're giving them information that's really not relevant. You're scaring the client unnecessarily.
Right.
Let's put things in perspective. Yes, there's 15 things that can be, addressed in this home inspection for this particular home on this particular day. But those 15 things may not be a priority for you. It's not a requirement to fix them.
Correct.
I want you to know about them going forward.
Right.
And if you know about them, then you can attack each one. Maybe put it on a maintenance list. Hey, this is next spring. I want to paint the trim because it's, chipping paint, that kind of thing. Caulk around the windows. Let's put that on the spring. You
brought a good point up, a referral. So as you are correct. So as agents, we refer clients to other contractors such as yourself.
Sure.
And it's not a correlation from Devin to me to you. He doesn't go through me to get to the client. It's now I've introduced the two, and the client is your client, and who's my client as well. It's just that a lot of buyers will say, I don't have a home inspector. So as agents, licensed, experienced agents,
you're in the field.
We're in the field. We know who we work with. We know how their quality of work and this and that. So we basically just give referrals, just saying, hey, this is who I worked with before. You're feel free to work with whoever you want to work, but I can give you a list of home inspectors that I think would do a great job for you. So it is a referral thing. And you're right. You don't work with me. You work with the client. That being said, what would you guide your client to that says, I don't have time to be at the home inspection? Who should be attending that home inspection with you? On behalf of my clients, I'm usually at every home inspection for two reasons. One is I need to have that rapport with you and to understand what you're pointing out so that when I see the report, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm not having to call back and forth. Well, what did you mean about this? What's that picture? And there's sometimes we have clients that just don't want to show up for the inspection. They can't get off work. They're out of state, those types of things. So touch a little bit about, do you want the client there during your home inspection?
I do.
Perfect.
I think that's a very important point. There are realtors that like, oh, let me open the door. You guys talk about it. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but I'm not in charge of that relationship. I think it isn't the best for the client. So let's walk down both those roads. The client is there. I like the client to be along with me, not asking every single thing. Hey, you missed that leaf that's touching the gutter. That's, a little bit too much. What I like to do is, do an inspection on the outside. I'll come to you and let's walk together the outside. These are the things that I find. And I don't just point out the negative things. Oh, the gutters are discharging water, downspouts too close to the house. I like to say, I like how the deck is built. Here's the benefits of having a deck built like that's only 10 years old. So I point out a lot of the positive things. If the client is not there, the inspection goes a little quicker, but I typically get more questions, or I have really refined my reporting style to be able to let the viewer see pictures that I'm talking about. I don't take a picture of a pristine oh, that window is perfect, and take a picture of it and put it in the report. That's really mindless. Doesn't make sense.
Right.
You want to know the meat and potatoes of what the current issues are. If you're not there, we can't have that dialogue. If you, as the realtor, are not there, you can't hear me have that dialogue with your client and be able to either reinforce or paraphrase or help the client understand. It's got to be an overwhelming set of circumstances. It's been a few years since I bought a house, but especially if you're a first-time buyer, even if you're a seasoned buyer, there's thousands and thousands of dollars going out the door, signatures and timelines and communications, and it's an overwhelming process. Now here comes a guy that's telling you all that's wrong with your house. It's got to be a little bit daunting for anybody, and I get it. So making that presentation effectively to a person in person, I think, is really important, because I put things in perspective. I put things into context, and I say, look, while there is active termite, I just had this week. What is today? Yeah, Monday. This week. No, I'm sorry, Friday. Friday, I had a conversation with a realtor on Monday. Friday, found a house that had some termites. It's not catastrophic. I mean, it's certainly reasonable to be able to respond to that. It is significant, but I put that in perspective to the buyer client who was there. And I said, look, these are the pictures. They didn't get in the crawl space with me, but I took pictures. There's active bugs. Let's get some treatment going on here, get a professional in and let them take a look at it and treat it.
Right.
So that, if somebody reads a report and says, what? My house has termites. What does that mean? So they're completely oblivious to the context of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm not one of those champions that say, oh, I found 5 things. I've done my job. That's not why I'm there. My job is to communicate effectively about what's the true condition of the house. And while it does have termites, here's what you can do to respond to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what's important. And if you're there as a client during that home inspection, you get to see that. And during a very stressful time, maybe that kind of settles things down.
Correct. I think that's a good point. So, like I said, I am always at my home inspection with you, or any home inspector that I do. If someone else uses someone else,
watch your mouth.
Always there. Pretty much, if at all possibly, I will be there, or someone from my team will be there.
Sure.
And I always ask my clients to be there if they can. But if they're not, they're assured that I'm there.
Right.
And I'm hearing the content that you're talking about, and I can definitely then relay that back. The other thing that I think is a great story from your side is you don't just go away after that home inspection.
Right.
You've always extended out to the client, call me at any time.
Yeah.
Even after you've moved in, if you have a question about the report or how to do something, how to maintain that home. So our jobs are basically trying to educate, or always educating our clients and our buyers. And even our sellers, because now even on the sell side, I do a lot on the sell side and buy side, is that we are also considering doing a home inspection before we list it, so that we can get that input first, fix those issues,
sure,
so that they don't come out of another one. But again, a home inspector is just like an appraisal. It's an opinion of the situation of that point in time.
Right.
So home inspections are very important. So that's one of the biggest reasons why Devin and I wanted to have this little discussion today, is to so that people, you have to think about the home.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you're not going to go buy a car without having it checked out, probably, right?
Yeah.
It's a little less expensive, but a home is the biggest asset you're ever going to own.
Yeah, and so, being able to have somebody that's in that field, a professional in the field. I never call myself an expert. I'm still a student. I'm always learning something, but I do have a lot in my brain and experience that says, here's what we're looking at, and let's put that into context, so it's not so overwhelming and daunting to be able to come to terms with, because you love the house, you love the area, you love the schools. It's 5 minutes from work or 10 minutes from work. There's all these benefits that you've considered, and then let's just put things in perspective.
Right.
You brought up a good point about inspections and appraisals. One of the things that I get a lot about is, what do you think my house is worth? And I'm like, oh, that's not my field. I don't, well, you're here inspecting the house. I am inspecting the house. It's a performance evaluation about what your house is, not a real estate appraisal of what it's worth. And a lot of people have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Do you find that in your?
No, absolutely. I mean, we do a comparative market analysis every time we're writing an offer on a property, or when we're going to list a property to discuss that with the seller. This is what the market trend is. This is where we are on the low, mid to high end of the property. And we have to define that we are not appraisers. We are realtors. So, an appraiser is a different set of license that's regulated by DPOR as well. And those are engaged by the lenders. So for folks that have a home that they're thinking about putting on the market, we can definitely connect you up with an appraiser to get an assessed value of what that appraiser thinks this property is worth before we go on the market. But in most cases, that doesn't usually happen. Depends on the uniqueness of the house. So if you're financing, you're always going to get an appraisal. But just because if you were paying cash, you can still get an appraisal.
Is that advised?
I advise it. I mean, it depends on the market of what's going on. If you can justify where that price is, then maybe not. But
this market is so crazy.
It's always an option, and I'd rather know up front than after the fact, because no one wants to pay over what a home is valued at, even if it's going to go up over the next 3 to 5 years, unless it's just the perfect home. If it's the perfect home, then there's no price on it.
From a real estate professional, do you think home inspections affect the value of a house?
Yes, I do, actually, because it's giving the buyer more information about that property. And if they see and hear from you as an inspector, licensed professional inspector, the quality of the home that's been built into and that's been put into this home, the details, the granite countertops, the molding. Is the molding falling down? Is it, the cheap stuff at Home Depot, or is it really real wood? Is it a quality builder? So yes, it puts the clients at ease to know from an inspection from your level that it's a second opinion based off of what the agent has said as well.
Sure.
So, because we get that all the time. What do you think of the quality? How are the cabinets? Exactly. What's the quality of that house?
Would you buy this house?
Yeah, exactly.
I can't answer that. I mean, I've bought a house where I live. It's had the worst termite damage I've ever seen.
But you bought it.
I did buy it, but I bought it intentionally.
Yeah.
I did it. I knew what I was getting into. I had my eyes open on that.
Right.
So I do know a little bit about it. Plus, I was able to repair it, and I'm going to reap the benefits at one time when I go to sell it.
Yep.
But a lot of people that don't have that background have a hard time, imagining, what could be wrong with the house and how much is it going to cost me to, replacing a furnace, $8,000, $10,000, $15,000, roof, maybe somewhere similar, depending on the size of the house.
Yes.
So those are big numbers.
Yeah.
They can affect the value of a house. Sometimes appraisers, do they actually hey, your roof is in bad shape. We're going to have to, put a strike against that, or we need to get a second opinion on the condition of the roof. Does that happen?
Well, they don't get on the roof.
No, they don't.
They don't get on the roof. When they come and do the appraisal, they're on the inside, they're outside, they're taking photos. So they're only seeing what they can see with the eye. If they're seeing that there's, degradation in the roof or a lot of granulars on the ground from the gutters, they may make I've never had an issue with that.
Sure.
About the age of a roof. I've never had that problem so far. So
I have done, in fact, I'm doing a pre-listing inspection today, where a client has called and said, look, we're working on this house. While we've got this much open in the house, whether they got walls open, I haven't been there yet. I don't know. Hey, can you come? It's, turn of the century house. It's got some additions over the years. Turn of the century meaning 1900, I think, somewhere. It's pretty old.
It's old, 18. It's my listing, actually. It will be my listing.
Yeah. So I just found that out. Well, what's interesting is they want to take a look at this while they're working on it. Wait, what else is going on in here? We know we've got these things that are readily available.
Yeah.
Let's look in a little deeper. Let's call a professional in, and that's me. I'm a third party. I don't have an axe to grind. They're going to pay me a fee. I'm going to do that evaluation, as an inspection, put it into a report, say, look, here's information about your house. While you're working on this, in my opinion, these are the things you could actually include in your renovation and have it ready for the seller. Ready for a new
buyer. Exactly.
Ready for a new buyer.
Yeah.
So I like pre-listing inspections. So somebody that has a house, maybe it's been in the family for a while, or maybe they bought it 25, 30 years ago, obviously the value has increased.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens if, it's 30 years old, maybe the roof is 30 years old. Maybe it was a good roof to begin with, but now maybe it's
right
time.
Right.
that kind of thing. So we talk about those kinds of things that need to be replaced, repaired, and put that into a report.
And that's a proactive approach from a seller's perspective. So,
It is.
Which that way they kind of know what's going on and what to expect. There may not be anything wrong with
Right.
it, but I think it's a good one for this because it's an older home. It's part log home. It's going to be a gorgeous property when they finish it.
And it can actually be used as a marketing tool to say, look, we've had an inspection on this by a third party. Here's the information we found. These are the things we fixed.
Yep. And that goes a long way, especially with the buyers. So the next thing is the other question I get a lot is, okay, how much is a home inspection going to cost me?
Sure.
So and it's not just cut and dry, black and white. It's there's a process based off of my understanding on the square footage of the house, the type of the house. So it can vary. So what is it for a townhouse versus a single family home that's under 3,000 square feet?
Sure. That's a great question. I get that a lot.
I'm not asking for a price. I'm just saying give a range.
Right. Square footage is part of it. A lot of times people will say, hey, I saw your referral or I got your referral and we want to do this inspection on this 5-year-old townhome. I'm not going to find a lot wrong with it unless there was some, problems within the house or the dwelling was mistreated. So the fees are going to be a lot less for something like that. Hey, it's a 30-year-old renovated townhome. In downtown DC, and it was a rental property for 15 years or something like that. And, those kinds of things factor into the pricing structure.
Yeah.
The region, so the zip code, DC inspections are going to be different than Loudoun County out in the country. So those kinds of factors change the value or the cost of a home inspection.
Right.
Somebody says, hey, here's a property I want to have inspected, and they don't give me any information about it. I can't, is it a 2,000 square foot house or a 7,500 square foot house with 3 heating systems, a mother-in-law suite downstairs, another wet bar upstairs, how big is it? So I can't really know until I see the information, the stats about the property.
Right.
So my average is somewhere between $500 and $700 for a home inspection.
Right. It's the best money you'll ever spend. It really is. You think about it.
I think, when I get calls back from the client, from the realtor, saying, look, you found some serious plumbing issues. We were able to negotiate the price down X dollars. And, that far and ahead paid for the inspection. I had one gentleman I did an inspection for, and I told him, look, your water heater is plugged into a GFI receptacle, which is part of code standards. And I said, just so you know it's there, before you call a plumber and say, I don't have any hot water, go down and reset that receptacle on your water heater, gas water heater. And he said, that was worth $500 right there.
Right.
Because I don't want to call a plumber on the Sunday night.
Right.
When I'm trying to get a shower and I have no hot water.
Yep. So I tell my clients,
details like that are important.
When you're buying a home, do your due diligence, get everything you can about the house that you can, about the information about what you're buying. I'm an advocate for home inspections.
Thanks, Mark.
But it's a little hard in this market because it's been, a lot of people are still waiving all contingencies. So, there's multiple ways you can do a home inspection. You can do it to void only. You can do it for negotiations. You can do it, not to void or to negotiate. Just do a home inspection.
Sure.
So I'm an advocate for it. So, Devin, are there any questions that I missed that you want to add today?
I think this is a great interaction. Love the particular information that you can provide a client. I've referred you on several occasions, somebody looking for a home realtor in Northern Virginia. You haven't been at this very long. What, 7, 8 years?
7 years.
7 years, yeah. But you just are knocking it out of the park, aren't you? Don't you have some serious credentials for the type of properties that you...
Good question. Best decision I ever made. About 2016, I started studying for my real estate, got my license in 17, and started with another brokerage, and then I moved over to the Keller Williams family under my own company name called the Mark Lang Realty Group just about 2 years ago. So I'm licensed now in Florida and in Virginia. I'm kind of working both states because there's a lot of people relocating from Virginia to Florida and some vice versa. They're coming back from Florida to Virginia. I do concentrate on, we have horses. Personally, we have horses, and we show, train, breed, and sell those horses. So I do like to be in the equestrian estates, the farms, but I also do a lot of luxury high-end homes as well. but I also do townhomes and single families and suburban. I'm where I go where my clients. So I'm not a cherry picker on saying I'm only going to deal with this type of home that I'm going to sell or purchase. I'm here for my clients. So if they want to buy a $250,000 home, I'm going to help them. They want to buy a $5 million home, I'm going to help them. So I don't cherry pick from that perspective. I think every client should be treated equally. They have a home to purchase or a home to sell. They have a need. And that's why I entered into this business, because I'm a very people person, people-oriented person, and I like meeting people and helping them find solutions and finding their homes and their forever homes and moving forward. So I absolutely love being a realtor. It's the best decision I ever made. Wish I had done it 10 years sooner. I was in corporate for 35 years. I do have accreditations with accredited buyers representation, sellers representation, the military relocation program certification, and luxury certification. So
wow, that's impressive.
And it's continued education. So always going to the next level.
Right.
So
awesome.
Thank you for asking that question.
Thanks for your time, and I love being involved in your programs and as well as working for your clients. And I hope that you continue to trust me with your clients and let them see what it means to get an important piece of this puzzle of buying a home figured out.
Absolutely. So if you're looking for a good home inspector, give Devin a call. Check him out on performanceinspections.us, and that is the right website, right? Reach out to him. He's very genuine. He cares about his clients. He cares about his relationships, and he's very down to earth. And he does like to talk, as you probably could tell today. But that's all a part of get to know who you're working with.
Right.
So that is a huge pat on your back, because a lot of people don't even want to talk. They just want to do their home inspection and move on. And I'm not like that as a realtor as well. All of my clients end up being my friends and family for life. And that's just building customer service.
Sure.
Not just during the transaction, but before, during, and after.
Right.
So, and you'll find that with Devin. So thank you so much, Devin.
Thanks, Mark.
Appreciate it.